Hello, folks. My name is Pat Cox, born and raised down in Biloxi, Mississippi. With all the hell that's going on in the world now, and sadness and deaths and everything, it just almost wants to make you cry. I spend a lot of time on my pier down here, especially at night when it's hot like this, when it's cool. And I'll be doing some fishing, and sometimes I just look up the stars in the sky. And it just puts you in a mood to where life is worth living. I know it's got it awful hard on people now, that don't have a place like I have where they can really go and enjoy themselves and not have to worry about catching the virus. I thought about a bunch of things, little short stories and all of my life that were real funny. I told my wife and my son about them. They said, won't you write a short book about it and put it on the computer where people can watch it and maybe cheer them up a little bit. And I said, that's a good idea. So that's what I did. I come down here 4 or 5 nights in a row and sit down here for hours and thinking about what I was going to say and what I was going to do and the stories I was going to tell. And I come up with just here. I got a bunch of little short stories I'm going to tell that are, all of them are true. And I hope y'all enjoy it. The first one I'm going to talk about, it's called A Snake in the Road. It's pretty hilarious, and I don't mean to hurt anybody's feelings or anything, especially black people, because that's what I'm about. But the story goes like this. On my 8 years at Christmas, I got a Daisy Red Ryder BB gun. I've been wanting one for a couple of years, but I didn't get it until I was 8 years old. Well, I was deadly. I'm gonna tell you right now, I was deadly with that BB gun. There was nothing safe. And every summer, I'd love to go down and spend time with my grandmother and grandpa down in Pasture Chan, Mississippi. And because he told some fabulous stories. He'd sit out on his front porch and people stop by and they'd buy a pint of moonshine. He'd tell them a story and they'd go on about their business. Plus he smoked hams and stuff, and sometimes he'd even sell a ham. Well, Grandma come out there one morning with me and Uncle Charlie, because everybody called him Uncle Charlie, so I might be referring to him as Uncle Charlie. Grandma come out there on the porch and give him a fresh cup of coffee and brought me one of her big cat head biscuits with a slice of a good smoked ham. And I sit eating, and she says, I'm going to go down to the bayou and go fishing today. And she said, I've been seeing a great big old moccasin down there by the edge of the trail. She said, I'm getting a little scary. She said, would you take your BB gun and go with me and see if you can kill him? I said, sure. So off me and her goes, going down towards the bayou. And sure enough, there was that snake right alongside the trail. Well, my Daisy Red Ryder made short work of that sucker in a hurry. So I told Grandma, I said, I want to go take and show this to Grandpa. She said, well, be careful now, because the head's still on, it's still got fangs, and it's still poisonous. I said, okay. So I picked it up with a forked limb and headed back to the house. I went around the side of the house to the front porch where Grandpa always sat, just about from daylight to dark. And I showed it to him and said, be mighty careful with that thing now, because it still got poison in it and all. I said, I will. So I said, I'm going to put it out there on the road and see what happens if people see it and see if they try to run over it. He said, that sounds like fun. So I did. I went and put it out in the middle of the road, and it wasn't long. Here come a truck and swerved to the right and run right over the snake, stopped and looked in the rearview mirror, and the snake wasn't moving. He said, went on about his business. And I got to thinking, I'm going to play a little trick. So I got some of Grandma's black fishing line, and I tied one just back behind the snake's head, and then one middle ways of his body. I went and put that snake on that side of the road, and my uncle's car was parked right there alongside the road, because he left with some guy working on a job for a couple days and left his car there. I said, I'll get inside of his car and crack the window, and I'll work that snake across the road. Well, I got everything all set up, and I'm watching. Here come a truck. I pulled the snake out, and boom, went right over that snake. Stopped. I made it wiggle a little bit. He got out of his truck, walked to the back of the truck, and reached in and got an axe. He come walking back there. I guess he's going to chop that snake's head off. And he seen that black line tied to his head in the middle of his body. He followed right over to my uncle's car. He walked up there, tapped on the window, and looked at me, and we both just went to laughing like crazy. He said, that's a good trick, son. That's a good trick. So I took the snake and I put it back across the road. And I'm sitting there waiting for another car. Here come an old black fella. He'd been by Grandpa's numerous times. He probably bought him 2 pints of whiskey a week for his arthritis. That's what he calls arthritis medicine. Here he come limping down the road with his cane. And I should have known better, but what 8-year-old boy has anything in his mind that's dangerous? Danger does not come to 8-year-old boy's mind. It just don't. When that old black fella got about even where that snake was, I jerked that snake out and hit him in the legs with it. He dropped his cane, went to hollering, and took off running down that road. I'm laying on that seat just laughing my fool head off. Next thing I know, I feel somebody grabbing me by both ankles, and I'm coming out of that truck. I got about halfway out of that truck, all of a sudden my little ass went on fire. Grandpa done took him, got his damn razor hone off the porch that he'd sharpened all his knives all with, left at home. And he went to wearing my butt out. I was screaming, hollering, and carrying on, and Grandma could run down the porch. She said, "What in the world's going on? What's all this hollering and everything?" And she seen what Grandpa was doing. She said, "That's enough, Charlie, that's enough." So he stopped. He said, "Come on, boy." So we went back on the porch, and Grandma was still on the porch. And he said, he says, "You could have given that old man a heart attack." He said, "And I just lost it." He said, "I don't know why I whipped you." He said, I don't believe in doing that. He said, "But I'm sorry I whipped you." I said, "No, I had it coming. I should have known better." And Grandma kind of looked at me. She started giggling. Then Grandpa started giggling. And I started giggling. We all just sat on the porch just laughing our butts off. He said, "Come on." He said, "We got to do something." So he got my uncle's keys and went out there. He said, "Go get that old man's cane across the road over there." And he said, "I'm going to get a pint of shine." As a matter of fact, I'm going to get him some age shine. So we got in the car. We run into him about 2 miles down the road. He covered a lot of ground. And pulled up there, and Grandpa said, "This boy here's got something to tell you." And I told him how sorry I was, and I didn't really mean to do it, and I should have thought better and everything. He said, "That's okay. I've done some crazy things like that too when I was a kid." And Uncle Charlie said, "Well, look," he said, "for all your trouble, I'm going to give you a free bottle of this rheumatism medicine." He was happy. So we got in the truck and went back home, and we just sat there on the porch, all three of us, and kind of giggled a little bit, and then we got time for supper, so we all went inside and started having some of my grandma's delicious supper. Well, that's about the end of that little first one there. And it seemed like most of my stories, for some reason, are about snakes. It might have been because where I was at, there was a lot of snakes. The next one I talk about is called the sheriff, the snake and the sheriff. And this is hilarious. I was sitting on the porch with Grandpa about 10 o'clock in the morning. Here come a big old fat sheriff pulling up there in a brand new cop car. And he had a big old pot belly and an old cigar in his mouth that was always dripping and always stunk. I don't know if he ever bathed, but I hated the man. Didn't like him at all because he always come on the porch and kind of bullied my grandpa a little bit. I always had to get a little bribe and I'd arrest him for making moonshine. So he come up on the porch, this Uncle Charlie's, my oldest daughter's getting married this weekend. And he said, "I want 5 gallons of your aged moonshine and I want 4 of your smoked hams for the wedding." Well, Grandpa couldn't argue with him. He had to give it to him. He'd be arrested and shut his moonshine business down. He'd been doing this for 30 years, He sold probably 50 to 75 gallons of moonshine off that porch every day, So they left to go in the back there to get the moonshine and the ham out of the smokehouse. And I was sitting there waiting for them to come back, and I happened to look across at the wood pile over there. There was a big old chicken snake curled up on that wood pile. Here I go again. I always had him achieve this mind. I always had to come up with something like that, So I said, wow. So I went over there and I caught that king snake. And I brought him over there. Of course, all the windows were down in the car because it wasn't air conditioning. And I dropped him through the back window. He on the back floorboard. He wanted to eat the passenger seat. I said, "That's good." Well, they come on out there, and Grandpa helped him load all the stuff up, put it in the trunk and everything. And he got in the car, didn't even say thank you, nothing, and left. It wasn't 15 minutes later. He come flying back, coming to a screeching halt like that my uncle's car. He come stomping up on that porch. He says, "I had the biggest damn snake I ever seen in my life come out beneath the front seat and got up on the seat and tried to get in my lap. So I shot holes all in the floorboard of my car, shot the window out, and then I rolled it over in the ditch. I mean, the whole side of the car was all dented up, full of mud and everything else." And he said, "I never did get the snake if it went out the window." And he looked at me and says, "You don't know anything about this snake, do you?" I said, "No, sir. I'm scared of snakes. I don't know nothing about that snake." Grandpa said, "Well, this time of the year, Sheriff, they've been everywhere. I've done killed a dozen of them right here in the yard." Well, the sheriff left, and Grandpa looked at me and said, "Did you put that snake in that sheriff's car?" I said, "I sure did." I said, "The only thing I regret it wasn't a poisonous cottonmouth." That's the end of that little short story, and I'm going to take a little break, and we'll come back later.